99.1, the sports animal. I'm Vince Ferrara here on Jimmy Hyams' preview of Tennessee's opponent, the Florida Gators. And Jimmy, we've been talking about Tennessee and Florida all week long, and we're almost here. Interviews that you've done, studying the opponent, what are a few things that have jumped out about this matchup to you so far?
Well, one, Tennessee has lost 16 of the last 17. I don't know if that's a fact that a lot of the players know. How much is that going to contribute to the game? Who knows about that? But that part of it, if there's a mental edge, it goes to Florida, because we've seen Florida come in here with teams that weren't all that good and still beat Tennessee. Here's the other thing about Florida. They haven't thrown a touchdown pass all season. In fact, Anthony Richardson has more tackles than he has touchdown passes. They had to tackle a Kentucky guy after an interception. Anthony Richardson, to me, is an X factor. What is he going to do? Is he going to play like he did against Utah when they won, or is he going to play more like he did against Kentucky and South Florida, where he wasn't that effective? And it looks like Florida's been reluctant to run him as much. There's some speculation that they're not running him on design runs as much because they don't have a backup quarterback. Well, if you want your offense at Florida to be running at an optimum level, he has to run the ball more. Look for him to run it more against Tennessee. Now, Kentucky did a nice job using a spy to stop him. He only had 4 yards rushing. But that's going to be a big key for them. Here's the thing. Can Tennessee, have they been able to block out the potential distractions of this week? Josh Heupel just said they've done a very good job. They've embraced it. He said it's impossible to completely block out all the noise because it's everywhere. But I think this team is mature enough. I think they've got enough senior leaders where Tennessee is able to handle that. I
agree with that. Do you think Tennessee has the personnel to spy Anthony Richardson and do what Kentucky did?
I'm not sure. Is Beasley good enough to do that? Is Banks good enough to do that? Is Mitchell good enough to do that? I don't know. It's one thing to have a spy. Right. It's another thing to have a spy that can tackle a guy in the open field. Right. So I'm not really sure who would be best designed to do that. I'm not sure if I want to use Banks in that role. I want him tackling folks. I want him roaming around and making tackles. So maybe they can, I don't know. But I think that's going to be crucial. Even Josh Heupel has acknowledged that. Their ability to contain Anthony Richardson in the run game is going to be a key for Tennessee.
Well, and mixing it up probably is the recipe there, right? You don't want to do the same thing because then they're going to have an opportunity to have an answer.
Right.
And then I think the trust factor in Anthony Richardson probably lacking right now. He sounds like he has lost some confidence. Does that mean, like you said, they go back to relying on those design runs, which they were reluctant to do? A lot of interesting storylines. Another thing we talked to Josh Heupel about, Jimmy, I want to get your thoughts on, is that press coverage on the perimeter. You asked Heupel about that with Tennessee's receivers. What do you think about that game within the game?
Well, Florida is typically really good at press coverage. I don't know if the cornerbacks are as good, but I have seen them just absolutely blanket Tennessee's receivers in press coverage. Now, I don't know that Tennessee's going to have Cedric Tillman. That hurts. Then you got Jalen Hyatt, who plays a slot, a little bit harder probably to press cover him, and then you got Brew McCoy on the outside. One of the things that Tennessee can do to counter that, they can send people in motion. They can use a stacked lineup on the outside. Those are some ways you can get around that. Maybe they play squirrel right and say, if you think you can press this guy, good luck. Because we saw in practice, Tennessee didn't have any defensive back that could stay in front of Squirrel White. So it'd be interesting to see if he gets more playing time because of that. Is Tennessee able to beat press coverage by Florida? I don't know, but I do think there are other answers. And the stack formation, putting folks in motion, I think there are other ways to get around that.
Well, do you think they move Hyatt away from that slot in this game? Do they stick somebody in for Tillman on the perimeter at his position? How does Tennessee handle it if Tillman is not there?
I don't move Hyatt from the slot. I leave him there. I think he's effective there. It's also harder to press cover him because he's off the line of scrimmage. He's been extremely productive. He leads Tennessee in receiving. Don't take a guy that's been productive and comfortable at that spot and move him. I think you move. McCoy's going to play Tillman's spot if Tillman doesn't go. I don't know who the other receiver is. Right? Is it Ramel Keaton? Is it going to be Holiday? Is it Walker Merrill? There's some options out there, but there hasn't been anybody that's stepped up to where I would be confident in saying, yeah, this guy's going to be productive. Not to Tillman productive. I don't mean that. But just some guy that can go out and get you 4 or 5 catches.
Last thing, what else is key in this game that fans need to know about?
I think it's going to be Tennessee's ability to run the football. Okay, so Utah ran for 230 yards. South Florida, which is not a real good running team, ran for 286. The South Florida quarterback ran for over 100. Will Hendon Hooker be more involved in the run game? I don't know. But I do think running the football is going to be vitally important for Tennessee against Florida, and Florida's been susceptible. Now, Kentucky, I think they had a back that ran it for 80 yards, Smoke, but they didn't just pound it away and get over 200 yards like the other two. So I think the run game for Tennessee is going to be very crucial in this game.
And penalties too. You pointed that out too in this series. It's important.
Yeah, Vince, that's a good point. So last year Tennessee lost 4 of their 6 games. They had double digits in penalties. Double digits. They had 11 against Akron last week. They've got to limit that. The other 2 losses they had last year where they didn't have double-digit penalties, it was against Georgia, it was against Ole Miss. They had 6 each. But if they need to limit the penalties because that can be crucial. It hurt them in 4 of those losses a year ago.
All right, that's me, Jimmy Hyams, Jimmy Hyams Sports Animal Podcast, audio and video form. You can subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, and also go to 991thesportsanimal.com. Preview the opponent. We'll recap the game afterwards in the post game, and then reflect back on the weekend in SEC football. You guys enjoy the game. It'll be a lot of fun. We'll talk about it after the game here on 99.1, the Sports Animal. See ya.